Welcome back, everyone. We have a pretty cool rifle for you here today. This is the H&R. It's a new production rifle. This is their 723. They make a few different versions of this gun, which we'll get into a little bit here later on in the video. But basically, it is a modern clone of a Colt 723, which was a rifle that was made in the mid-'80s is when it started being produced and was made all the way through about the mid-'90s. It has been made famous because a lot of Delta Force operators during the Mogadishu days were using rifles that were essentially this rifle. And what the heck is it? Well, before we get into all the details like close and personal, a few things that just make it what it is. Super lightweight profile, 1-in-7 twist, 4150 chrome lined barrel. This one here is 14.7 inches with the pinned A2 flash hider, so that way it is non-NFA. The actual 723s, like the real ones that the military was using, utilized a 14.5-inch barrel, so 0.2 inches off, but you don't have to go through the NFA. In my opinion, absolutely worth it. And then we have an upper receiver back here. A lot of people will say it is an A1 upper. It sort of is, in my opinion. It is a closer copy of the C7, in my opinion. We'll get into that here a little bit later on. And then an A2 lower receiver. So that basically are the things that make the 723 a 723. Some folks will claim that this particular clone here is a better clone of the Colt 653. If I can remember, I will leave a link down below into the Colt Museum reference library, so that way you guys can kind of go through it and see all the little details for those of you guys who are like clone dorks or clone autists, depending on the term you want to use. However, I think it satisfies the itch for both of those rifles. But before we get into all the different details and work through it tip to butt, let's head out to the range and see what kind of groups we can get out of this little lightweight carbine. All right, time to lay down a few groups with this rifle and optic combination. Right off the bat, obviously, this is not ideal for precision shooting. I think everyone kind of gets that, but I want to see how it does. We have the primary arms 3X micro mounted up there and the carry handle, which certainly is cool. However, as I've said many times on the channel, when actually testing accuracy, I like to have at least 6X magnification, to be fair, but we don't have that due to the configuration of the rifle, which is fine. We're going to make do, and we are going to make it happen. So all the rifles, ammo that you guys have seen shot throughout this video has come from our friends at Firearms Depot. Big thank you to them for supporting the 5.56 and 2.23 here. That includes what's in the rifle right now. In there is some Fiocchi M193, so 55 grain, 5.56 chambering. We have a couple other fancier loads that will run through it as well. Target's downrange at 100 yards. Caldwell rest, and that's about it. So yeah, there's nothing about this setup that's good for precision. I'm using that shin weld there as well. Next load up here is going to be some Underwood ammo. This is their Controlled Chaos 55 grain 223. It is an open tip projectile on there, and we'll see how it does. And it's got fancy cases. Well, right now you guys know what those groups look like. I have no idea. I can't see them at this distance with this optic. So lastly here we have some heavy stuff. This is going to be some Norma with their 69 grain golden target projectile. And we'll see how it likes the heavier stuff. You never know. You never know. This again is another open tip load. Let's go check them out. All right, we started out with that M193 up here, and that one seems to be just kind of crazy. Right there, we're at 2 3/4 inch in terms of the group there. Then we came down here with the Controlled Chaos, tightened it up a little bit for sure. And we're right at 1 7/8 on that one. Yep, 1 7/8. Then we came over here with the 69 grainers, and looks pretty similar, exactly the same. 1 7/8 on that one for that group. Again, guys, if I had better magnification, there's no doubt those groups would be tighter, but wanted to see what we could do with the setup, and that's what we got. With those groups out of the way, we'll walk through the rifle tip to butt and get into some of the details of this actual rifle here. Of course, we have the pinned A2 flash hider on there. Like we said earlier, the A2, for those who are new, pretty good flash hider, pretty good in terms of reducing compensation. Also pretty good at not kicking up a lot of dust with that closed bottom on there. It's just a very good overall muzzle device. And of course, it is clone correct. It's been used for many, many decades at this point on America's service rifles. Continuing on back, like we said, 14.7-inch barrel as opposed to the correct 723 14.5, but to get around the NFA, I think pretty much everyone would prefer this as opposed to having to file an SBR form and pay a $200 tax stamp and all the other nonsense that comes with it. So non-NFA item, which certainly is good. Barrel itself is 4150 CMB steel. It has a chrome lined bore and chamber, which certainly is nice. Has that 1 in 7 twist, so it has a modern twist, which I know a lot of folks will like as well. So pretty much any of the ammo that you want to shoot through there, you should be able to do, and it will stabilize it well. Also, hitting on back there, we do have our bayonet lug, which is for, of course, mounting bayonets, but it's also very good at making gun grabbers very mad. The actual front sight block there is not F-marked, which is absolutely correct. You should not have a F-marked front sight block if you don't have a flat top upper receiver. So clone correct, as well as being correct just for actually zeroing your rifle, which certainly is important. We do have our sling attachment point on there. Then continuing on back there, we do have that round handguard retainer in there, which again would be clone correct. The actual handguards themselves are very skinny. Of course, over the years, probably 5 to 10 years after this rifle was phased out and the M4 came in, the handguards themselves got bigger for some apparent reason, but these are the nice slim ones there. They do have heat shields in there, as you guys should be able to see. And of course, the barrel itself is also marked 1 in 7 twists with the H&R marking on there. Continuing on rearward, we do have the grayed out Delta ring on there, which is clone correct for some 723s. Some 723s would go out with the straight collar as well. I've seen them with both. On that note, one thing to point out here is that H&R, as of right now, 2025, in terms of their current offerings, they offer 4 different models of this particular carbine. Big differences are going to be whether or not it is going to be gray with the gray finish that we have here, which this one absolutely is. This actually also was a blem model for anybody wondering. However, all of the blems you see I put on there, it didn't have a blem that I could detect as it came from the factory, but they do offer it with the gray like we have here, which would be correct for the time period. And they also offer a version with no shell deflector on there, or at least I should say the original shell deflector. And then of course they have one with the modern shell deflector like we have there. Both versions will have the forward assist, which I personally do like. So with that, let's continue on with the actual upper receiver itself. So like we said, most folks will consider this the A1 style upper receiver, which it certainly is. However, one big difference is that it does have actual M4 feed ramps in there, which makes it, in my opinion anyway, more of a C7 upper receiver in terms of clone correctness, but you guys can argue that down below in the comments all you want. One thing that's nice that I did notice in there is that it does have anti-seize there on the barrel nut. That is one thing that a lot of budget rifles kind of will skip over. This one did not. That is both clone correct as well as the correct way to build a rifle, in my opinion. So continuing on to the rear sight there, we of course have dual apertures, the L-marked aperture as well as the non-L marked aperture. Now I will roll in a photo here for those of you guys who are not familiar with the A1 style of sights. The L is actually for long. Some folks think it has to do with lighting conditions. Whether or not you were taught that in the Army may or may not be true. However, the actual manuals for the M16A1 and the M16A1 sights do not say that it is for long engagements. So a lot of people who are used to A2 style sights will say, oh, there's no difference in the size of the aperture, which absolutely is true for most folks in terms of how they perceive it. But the actual height over bore of each of those apertures is different. So whichever one you zero it for, if you don't want to flip back and forth, just make sure you keep it on that one to keep it consistent, because if you flip it and you didn't know it, your actual point of impact downrange can change. So just know that. Then continuing on to the lower receiver there, like I mentioned, it is basically an A2 lower receiver. It is marked A2, and then of course in terms of the actual fencing that we do have on the lower receiver, it's going to be correct for an A2 as well, particularly back here at the rear where it bulges out a little bit, giving it that reinforcement that the A2 lower receivers have. The actual grip itself is going to be A2. Now some of the Colt 723s would have A2s, some of them would have an A1. Now people will argue back and forth in terms of if it has an A1 and it doesn't have an actual shell deflector, is it a 653? Again, I will let you guys debate that down below in the comments. But then continuing rearward there, we do have the correct castle nut on there. So many of you guys are used to the castle nut that has to be staked. However, back when this rifle was coming around, this castle nut was the correct one there with the witness holes in there. So a little bit different than what many of you guys are used to. And of course, you also have to use a different assembly tool if you're going to use that one. So just putting that out there, if you're looking to actually build one yourself, just note that you're going to have to actually get a different tool to do so. One thing I neglected to mention there was the actual charging handle, which is a standard AR15 or M16A1 charging handle. If you guys have seen my 601 review, Colt 601 clone, you guys know that there were some different ones out there in the early 60s and 70s in terms of shape and size. However, by the time the 80s came around, this was the standard charging handle, so no issues at all on that one. Another big difference on this rifle versus modern rifles that you absolutely will notice as a shooter is going to be the actual receiver extension here. And let me actually just pull this stock off. This is not modifying the weapon, YouTube reviewer. So as you guys can see there, the actual receiver extension only has 2 positions, and that was clone correct for the era. The modern 4 position, which is what most of the M4s out there have on them, didn't come around for a long time after this rifle. And then the 6th position that we're all used to today didn't come around for another 10 years after that. So in terms of clone correctness, it is correct. However, in terms of actual shooter comfort, it's really going to depend on how tall you are, if I had to guess, and or what type of body armor or not body armor that you are wearing. Me personally, I'm a touch under 6 feet. I'm like 5'11 3/4, and that all the way out extended stock for me, if I'm not in the prone position, does seem a little bit long to me. However, in the fully collapsed position, it also seems a little bit short. So for me, I kind of feel like I'm always sort of in between, if that makes sense, where I realize some of you guys may not have an issue with that at all. That said, for me, for a clone style rifle, I think it's totally worth it and super cool. I have no issues with that at all. I do understand that H&R did make some with the six position receiver extensions. That's what I've seen on the internet. However, I have not seen one on the website or anything like that. I believe they all come with the correct 2 position as of this post. Continuing on to the stock, again, this would be that 723 sort of like pre-car style stock that a lot of folks would associate with this rifle. We have our 2 sling attachment points here. Both you can loop it through or over the top, whichever one you prefer. And then of course you can slide it via this lever, and it doesn't lock in place at all. If I'm actually quiet, you should be able to hear it rattle pretty darn well. So again, it is nothing like what we have with the modern stocks that all lock in place and have tension adjusters and all of those sorts of things. But in terms of clone correct, super cool on that one. A few other things that we didn't talk about in terms of the internals, the actual trigger itself is going to be a basic mil spec trigger on there. So it's going to break right around 5.5 pounds, something like that. And some of the components on there on the original rifles would have been gray. Some of these, of course, are black. I'm not sure what photos I'm rolling in here. It may actually be hard to tell, but up close and personal, you can tell that. If you are super concerned about that, a really easy way to get that black off there of any of the components, trigger components, etc., selector levers, all that stuff, is if you put a little jelly on there, it will make it appear gray. Just so you know, if you guys are looking for that perfect clone correct look, that will do it. Bolt carrier group on there is going to be phosphated on the outside, 8620 full auto profile carrier. It does have a 158 Carpenter steel MP tested bolt, very high quality in my opinion, no issues at all with that. And I think those are pretty much the details of the rifle in terms of how it looks, important features, those sorts of things. And with that, what do I think of it overall? Was it reliable? All of those sorts of things. So what do I think of it overall? I think it is insanely cool. I personally really like the shell deflector, although I don't shoot, left-handed very often. I think a lot of folks out there from a practical standpoint will like that. And again, it's clone correct. Both are clone correct with and without, but I do prefer that version. I also like the gray version here as opposed to the black. I think it's just a little bit cooler because you don't really see a lot of gray anodized stuff anymore. Everything's black and boring, and this one absolutely is not black and boring. Reliability on this rifle, we have just under 900 rounds, right over 875. Most of that has been either PMC 223 55 grain or PMC M193 55 grain from the folks over at Firearms Depot. We definitely appreciate them sending, of course, all the ammo that we've used for this test, and it has had a grand total of 0 malfunctions of any kind. If I could say something I would change, if you will, in terms of like the shooting experience, it is a little bit harsh in the recoil for what it is. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. Number one is going to be the weight on this thing. This thing's under 6 pounds as it comes from the factory, which is very, very lightweight. That contributes to a little bit more felt recoil, as does the stock. There's no pad on there or anything like that. Additionally, the stock itself, the actual surface area that's coming into contact with your shoulder, is a little bit less than what you'd get with a modern stock. So those two things, as well as the fact that, in my opinion, it's slightly overgassed for brass case ammunition, does make it a little bit harder in the recoil department. Now, again, it's still an AR-15. It's still very light recoiling overall. If I was to tune it a little bit, I would definitely drop a H buffer in there just to soften that up a little bit, but that is just me. And again, I live in a warm climate where I'm not worried about cold conditions, but that is a rant for another day. So again, you guys have seen the accuracy, you guys have seen the reliability. Again, 0 malfunctions of any kind, all different types of magazines with this one, no issues at all, which is as good as you could possibly do. So I definitely dig that. Now let's talk about the price point. Now, YouTube is a little bit weird about price points these days. So one thing I will tell you, again, going back to what I said earlier, there are 4 different models. So the price is going to vary depending on which one you get. It's going to be somewhere, as of this recording anyway, it could change in the future if you guys are watching this down the road, somewhere between 1,000 to 1,199 units of measure, whatever units of measure are where you live. So in terms of a price point, it's what I would consider to be a very fair price point. Obviously, a lot of these components have to be specially made in 2025. They're not just off the shelf AR-15 parts, and like the forgings and things like that, those are being run on Nodax Bud forges that are very specific to these guns. It's very expensive, time consuming, and a lot of the things just aren't made in quantity like they used to be. For example, a non-F marked front sight block that also has a .625 base. There's just not a lot of those. Most of those are going to be F marked. Most of them are going to be .75, etc. if you're going to have a front sight base. So I really do think that for what you get, if you want a clone correct type of rifle, it is a perfectly fair proposition from the folks over at H&R. And like I said, quality seems very good. 0 malfunctions, can't be mad about that. And in terms of like all the forge lines and stuff like that, you have that slight forge line there up front on the top of the carry handle. Same thing is true here on the front of the magwell. All of those things are just the little things that they did to make it a little bit more clone correct than some of the other competitive offerings out there. Now, if you think that's expensive, just go ahead and price a Colt 723 and see how much that costs, and I think you will very likely change your tune very soon. Who are these rifles for? So number one, it's for a collector, somebody who wants to have something that is a discussion piece, but is still a very functional rifle. In my opinion, probably most of the people who are getting this rifle are getting it to make a Delta Force Mogadishu style clone. That said, it also could be a very handy range rifle. I would have 0 issues with this rifle at all if someone was like, oh, I just want a very lightweight handy gun for self-defense, to defend my property, something like that. I would be all about it. Like I said, with that primary arms optic on there, or any other type of optic, and a light and a sling, this rifle could fill pretty much any role, as it did, obviously, in the Battle of Mogadishu. If it was good enough for those guys in an actual, war environment, I'm pretty sure it would be good enough for anything that most of us are going to use. Full disclosure on that, I should mention that the folks at H&R did send this out for the review. They don't get to see this video before you guys do or anything like that. They're not paying me to review it, but just full disclosure, they did send it out for the review. I did request it because I think it is super cool. I think that's pretty much it at this point, guys. If you have any questions, anything like that, let us know down below in the comment section. We will definitely be checking them out. If you guys like this video and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel, I am making them. There is an algorithm censoring your eyes from my content. Easiest way to get around that is to sign up for the email at the website here on your screen. This will get you put on 2 different email lists. Number 1 will be the monthly email that goes out once a month, and it has all of the videos since our previous month's email went out, so that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content. Very important, obviously, for the algorithm. It will also get you signed up for the Daily Deals email. So if any of the ammo that we used, if this particular carbine, any of the optics, any of the other accessories that you guys dig here on the channel, if those are in stock and at the best price that we've seen them anywhere on the internet, they will be in that email. All 8, usually sometimes 10 of the items in that email will fit that category. I've done the price comparisons for you. So again, whatever the item is, if it's in the email on a given day, it's the cheapest I know of for that item. Saves you guys some time, saves you some money. It's a win-win. Plus there is also a good meme in there that a lot of folks like. Additionally, we have an SMS service that you guys can sign up for at the website here on your screen. At most, you'll get 1 text from me a day. Again, it's either a new video that just dropped or a great deal that just dropped. Once a day max, and it's not even every day, so it's not super spammy or anything like that. Additionally, if you're on that SMS text link, we do a monthly Q&A video just for members who are signed up for that. So if you guys want to sign up for that and jump on a relatively limited Q&A video, like i.e. it's not a million subscribers like we have here on YouTube. Hopefully one day it is, but right now it's not. And if you guys want to sign up for that and ask me whatever kind of questions about whatever you want to ask, you can do that as well. And with that, that's pretty much all I have. Thank you all for watching. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.